Good afternoon, everyone. Today is the August 15th meeting of the Elementary School Building Committee. And I thank you all for joining in the middle of August, which I know for many of you is potentially vacation time. My first order of business, as always, is since we're conducting the meeting by Zoom, is to make sure all the committee members can hear and be heard by us. And I'm just going to call out names and just indicate that all is well. Michael Gallo O'Connell,
Present.
Bruce,
I'm here.
Simone,
Here.
Allison,
Hello.
Angelica,
Here.
Tammy,
Here.
and welcome back, Tammy. Jennifer,
Here.
Deb. Deb, could you just speak up? I didn't hear any
Here.
voice.
Here.
Okay,
Yeah.
good. Alicia?
Here.
Okay, so the meeting is called to order, and Ksenia, we have a pretty simple agenda, so we're going to lead off with you, but I think as everyone saw, we have a construction update. I'll just tick it off. We have a construction update, and then we have an update on the playground with a memo that you all received, and I listed it as potential vote, so we don't necessarily have to vote today, and invoices and public comment. So that's the sequence. So first off, our Ksenia and or whoever is doing the update on construction. And I see we've got both Danesco here and Accenture. So Ksenia, it's yours. And I
It's all a team project, as will be the presentation. So we'll have Connor put up the slides and Tim will walk us through what we see. But overall, I'll just start by saying that by the money, the project is about a third spent. By the money on the construction contract, where we were 28%. So that gives you a general idea of how far we are through this. And the visual impact of the changes, it will speak for itself. Go ahead. And Connor, maybe one slide at a time.
So is Tim talking us through these, or are we just going to flash through slides? What are we doing?
I can talk through them if that's my cue, certainly. Here we are, I believe. Actually, is this last month's photo or now? The exterior, the steel structure is complete at this point and has been for a little while. You can see the exterior walls being framed. To date, they are about 60% enclosed on the building. And as we go through the other photos, you'll see the progress. I would read the text and sort of go along with the presentation, but I can't really read it with a low contrast on my screen. So here you can see the sheathing has made it all the way to the east end of the building. The library is on the right. The yellow is the exterior sheathing that is the exterior wall, and the white on the left is the air and vapor barrier that is applied once the sheathing is up. And then the lower left-hand corner of the picture on the left, you can see the masonry has started at the northwest corner and is all the way up to the second floor. You're on the north side of the building, so it's in shadow there, and you can't really see the contrast of colors, but they are progressing nicely. Here is preparation to pour the slab in the administration area in the picture on the left, and the cafeteria on the picture of the right. With these final slab pours, all of the floors in the building will be cast, and the concrete portion of the job will be done. And that should happen in the next few weeks. Here's a better look at the brick that is going up at the north and south of the building, so you can have a better sense of the colors and the contrast that you will see. I should note that on the window openings to the left that you see the larger format concrete block, that is not the final product. There is a tile that will be applied to that you may remember from the renderings. It's a series of very vibrant colors that will give the whole building a little bit of pop in the final condition. Here are pictures inside. On the left is the corridor. Those hangars are all of the mechanical piping that's going to be above the ceiling. And on the right is actually the third floor adjacent to the cafeteria, which will be a couple of offices and the literacy library in the background. But it is an interesting shot of the steel and all of the bracing that we have there. More pictures of the exterior. Here you can see in a few locations they have the brackets up for the exterior sunshades that will be on the south elevation. Toward the, yeah, you can see them there. And then on the right, all the way in the distance, they are up. But the masons and the exterior plate gauge metal framing crew are progressing quite nicely.
And then onto the last slide, the next site tour will be, I believe it's September 30th, Tuesday, September 30th at 3 p.m. So if you're interested in attending, please send me an email. And I will be creating a calendar hold for that as well.
And the first site tour happened in July, and it was very well attended. Everybody enjoyed being there so much that it went on. We had really good participation. So we had started that one at 4 p.m., but because it went on as long as it did, I think we were keeping the construction crew there a little long. So we decided going forward to move it up to 3 p.m. Hopefully that still works for everybody. Do please let Connor know when who wants to attend and when we're available. And if there's particular interest to participate from some folks that the 3 o'clock hour just never works, please let us know that too, and we'll make adjustments.
Ksenia, I just have a question. The school will be in session that day, correct?
I expect so.
So my question is, if people come, we should try to park off-site is what I'm thinking, that you won't necessarily, or will you have places where we can park?
It'll depend on how many people are coming. So once we know, a couple of days out, we will send instructions and we'll make accommodation on the site itself. We'll also send specific instructions, reminders about appropriate clothing and footwear, etc., to those people who indicated an interest in.
Okay.
Okay.
Are there any, sorry to just jump in, but are there any questions on any of this for people? I do encourage anyone who didn't go on the last walkthrough to come. It's pretty exciting when you look out the windows, when you can get all the way up to the third floor and look out when we were there. And it's amazing how much has been done since we were there on the 22nd of July. It's not only a few weeks later. It's kind of stunning. So I think we can take this down, and just so I don't see any hands up for any questions or comments. So the next agenda item is something that was almost under the late breaking news, the 48-hour rule, but Bob Parent, who on behalf of the town, because I think you remember the entire playground surface, Corkeem, was removed from Danisco doing it to being the town responsibility because of the concerns with the risks with it. So Bob, as a project manager for the town, and first with Margaret and Danisco alerting it to us that not all was going well with the Corkeem out at this one school. Bob has been pursuing it because the town is the one that will have to contract directly, not through Danisco or anyone else, with the product. So Bob, I'm going to turn this over to you, and I've been allowed screen sharing. So to the extent everyone was sent your memo in advance, and I posted it. So what I would suggest is you summarize your findings and then use your pictures to also talk about what you saw, because he went out to the school, which is my understanding, it's It's the first one in Massachusetts, but I also think it's the first one in New England that has been trying to use this product. So that's why it's on the agenda for today. Deb?
Point of order, can you reiterate the part about the 48 hours? Because I'm not following that. It seems to me that this potential vote was posted less than 48 hours, so I'm concerned.
No, the issue is that anything that's late breaking that happened within 48 hours of me posting the original agenda, which just had construction update, is fine. We don't have to take a vote today. We can decide not to take a vote today, so I listed it as potential vote. But we do have to do something because the instruction to the town was Corkine. So if we're going to shift in any way, we have to at least have a discussion today. But anything that's late breaking that I have to post the agenda within 48 hours of the meeting, and I had already posted agenda when you all got it that just said construction update, but I only found out about this on Wednesday. So that's just said, I could have just done it on 48 hour, but since I had the memo, I decided to get it to everyone as quickly as possible and put it on, not just put it on the agenda. Is that okay for you? I mean, we can
Just
put it.
just a process follow-up. I mean, I understand that the memo was it just seems like the site visit was more than 48 hours ago. So I understand the memo is more current than that, but I'm just not understanding why this was not originally
Because I didn't have any information.
right.
I didn't have any information on this a week ago. Nothing,
Okay.
nothing. You know, Bob put together this memo. So it is on our agenda. We do not have to take a vote. I think
Okay.
we should hear what
Yeah.
was seen. The issue is if we think Corkine, after what we hear from Bob, is not viable, what instructions do we want to give? We don't have to decide what other direction we go in right now, but we have to make a decision because the playground is going in. We'll hear about the timing for the playground in time for the school to open. So this isn't something that we can just ruminate on for months. And if we want to, so the other thing I'll say on timing, if we want to go back to the Conservation Commission, if we want to, that's an if. They have a pretty full agenda and they don't move quickly.
Yeah.
Okay. We don't have to go back to them if we went to engineered wood fiber. If we went to, we went to a completely different, they're fine with Corkine. There may be, but that was only because of that decision that we moved off of PIP originally. We moved off of it because of their decision. So this is just, it's a timing issue, but we do not have to decide today.
Okay.
Okay. So Bob, I'm turning it over to you on present what you found out. And I have to also, I think a big thanks to all of us because this wasn't just a few phone calls. This was visiting and talking and after an early alert. And Bob, the floor is now yours.
Great, thank you. Just a little bit of background as to why I'm involved, as you indicated, the history with Danisco, not being comfortable moving forward with this product. When that came up, the town manager asked me to get involved, to be the town's representative in terms of moving this project forward. And I was very comfortable with that. And you may or may not know, but my prior position as city engineer in Holyoke, I oversaw the design of 5 playgrounds in the past about half dozen years, or 4 years when I was in Holyoke, that involved a variety of engineered wood fiber and poured in place, obviously didn't involve Corkine. So when Paul asked me, was I comfortable moving this process forward? I said, definitely very comfortable with that. I got involved, I believe it was originally in February of this year, and started to try to get a dialogue going with the supplier, manufacturer, and potential installers, because I needed to make certain before we started a procurement process that what we were putting out for public bidding because the installation will have to be public bid, was something that they were willing to bid on. It, it made no sense to go out there, so I shared the specifications, I shared the design that Danisco had produced for the playground layout, and started a dialogue with the former sales manager for Ameren, Ameren America, who's the supplier of the cork material, and went back and forth a couple of times, and then it got silent. And we were eventually advised that he was no longer with the firm and that I should reach out directly to the president of Ameren North America, who is responsible for the entire business that Ameren North America does relative to cork products in the country. Had a dialogue going with him. Again, things stopped. It got silent at that point. I talked with Margaret, and Margaret said, well, maybe I can reach out to the international contact that I had at Ameren, and maybe they can get the attention of the president. And that's what happened. The president finally responded back and said, oh, I didn't see your emails. I didn't get your phone calls, et cetera, et cetera. And then we were then turned over to a new sales manager for Ameren just recently, and put in contact with a new installer for the material. Then the new installer went silent as well. And I placed a couple of phone calls to the new sales manager, and ultimately basically left them a fairly terse message that said, we need to figure this thing out or we're not going to be able to move forward. So there's a lot of history there, and I probably don't need to elaborate. I did learn a few things from the sales manager that I'll share it at some point if the opportunity comes up. But we knew that there was a problem at the East Hahn facility. We were advised of that early this spring, late winter, early spring. I believe we shared that with the building committee at one point and basically indicated we were aware of some issues. We're going to look into those issues and report back to the building committee. Essentially what happened in Easton is nothing happened until just this summer. There was an agreement originally between the contractor, installer, and town to repair and replace the work that had been installed that was supposed to start right at the beginning of the school break. That didn't happen. The contractor didn't show up. It finally got pushed and pushed and pushed, and I was advised by the facility manager about a week and a half ago that things were happening. So it was actually a great time for me to get down there. I was able to see really the Corkine product in all the phases of the Corkine product, as well as the repair areas. And if you don't, well, so that's what brought me to Easton last week, and that's what allowed me to, because I didn't want to come back to this committee and offer any new information without actually having a chance to get out there, see it, understand it, have conversations with the manager as well as with the designer for the facility. And I'll keep this brief because I've learned enough so that, anyway, I'll keep this brief. What you see in this photograph is a new installation of Corkine partly underway. You see the stone base material, and you see the Corkine base material. This was actually on an area of the playground that was not touched last year at Easton. They authorized, in addition to the repair, they authorized the contractor to move forward with the work that had been halted because of the performance problems. One of the interesting things I learned from the sales manager at Corkine is, if you can't really see it in this photograph, but you're there in person, you would see that the stone is shiny. And I wondered, why is it shiny? Looked like it had been treated with something. And talking with the sales manager, they actually take the binder material that they apply to the Corkine to stick it all together, and they apply that to the stone as well. Let that set up, and then place the binder material on top of that, or place the base material on top of that. And that's the reason some of the difference is that that's because Corkine has the tendency to float. And they've learned that if they don't effectively stick it to the stone, they have had problems with this material floating if groundwater accumulates in that location. So that's one difference with Corkine that we don't see with the conventional poured in place material. This again, a shot of a completed new base material installation. You can see it's relatively coarse material. I included a photograph that's, they're pieces of cork about a 1/4 inch, maybe a little bit big in general dimension. Same thing, base material, add a new installation. This is a finished top course at a base installation, and I have a zoom in on it. It's a much finer material that's applied, but it also feels differently. And again, talking to the sales manager, it feels stiffer. And the designer confirmed with me that was the same impression that she had, that it didn't feel quite as pliable as a poured in place material or even the base material of Corkine. And what the manufacturer indicated, sales rep, is that that's by design, because the base material underneath the surface material is not as strong as the surface material, and it has a tendency to effectively crack and to break into pieces. And the intention of the surface material is to tie all of that together. And because of that, that's why it feels different. It's the same material, but it's constructed differently and behaves differently than the underlying material. Again, that's a difference with this product. That's what this product looks like very close. The pieces of cork are very small, less than 1/8 in dimension. And again, as comparison to the base course. Again, close up of the base course material. I took a photograph of the binder material that they use to glue everything together with effectively. And I did it for 2 reasons. One, to just indicate, there's some, very high volatile solvent type material that basically that this binder is made up of, very similar to the poured in place. I don't know if it's the exact same chemical makeup, but it's the same idea. Some very high volatility chemicals that are used as the glue that binds everything together. The other piece, that the main reason I took the photograph, is if you look at the installation temperature, they talk about having a limitation of 5 degrees C to 25 degrees C. 25 degrees C is 78 degrees. That's a pretty low temperature to install. It's a pretty tight limit. We don't have too many days in the summertime, for instance, where the temperature doesn't get above 78 degrees. So what they're doing in Easton and the repair areas was they were doing all the work at night during cooler temperatures. That's great. On the other hand, the ability to install things carefully, properly, with lighting, etc., at nighttime it can be tricky. But it was mainly the temperature that I picked up on here. So this slide shows one of the repair areas. So the problems that they had, and let me, if you don't mind, I'm going to stop sharing this and show something else. Oops. Let me try this again. Almost there. So these are some photographs that we obtained actually from February of this year. I didn't take these photographs. They were sent to us. This shows some of the problems that were seen within a couple of months of installation, in some cases within a few weeks of installation at the Eastern facility. They were getting delamination of the surface material in the high area wear areas around the spinning device, at the base of the swings and slides and things like that. The surface material was basically, breaking away from the binder material underneath it. And the binder material is not as strong as the surface material, so that starts to wear away fairly quickly. The other thing they were seeing, again, this was very quickly, I think within a few weeks of installation, was cracking through that surface layer. And another picture of some of the wear and delamination as of this last spring or February, not even before they started the repair work. So if I go back to the slides I was sharing originally, let me, this shows an area that is in the process of being repaired. You can see the circled areas. Those circled areas are areas where the base material was completely cut out and replaced. I don't know why that judgment was made, presumably because there was greater wear and more impact on the base layer. And then you see the remainder of the location where they physically came in and sanded much of the top course off. It's still part of the top course, but their plan is now to then retop this entire location. That may be done by now. The work was supposed to have happened this last weekend. It may have happened this last weekend. I don't know. So, and you can see, this is a sanded area where there was delamination right through the top course down into the underlying base course. Again, this is another location where they took, a significant piece of the top course off with the intent of replacing it. Same thing, again, cutting out some sections and sanding other sections. And then in some areas, they completely replaced the base course. So this is a location where they took all the base course out and put in new base course. And it has new top course on there as well now. So that's what I saw. I spoke with the director of facilities. I spoke with a designer. The designer hopes that this works in Easton. She's not sure, based on what she's seen to date. The director of facilities is skeptical. He says as a minimum, it takes very good, extensive training for the installation and very careful installation, a very careful monitoring of the installation. And that's the only way that he sees that there's a chance for the product to be successful at their location. So that's what I saw in Easton. Let me talk a little bit about Ameren, where they are today, as I understand it. And what they've told me is that they are retooling the way that they sell and install the product. They are coming up with a different approach in terms of certifying installers, people that have been trained, that they are willing to put their name out there and say they're an Ameren certified person. They're in the process of doing that. They struggled providing many names to me. They provided one name. I had one great conversation with that firm, and they've gone radio silent again. In fact, the sales rep from Ameren told me on Monday, I should hear from them in a day or two, and if I don't hear from them in a day or two, let him know. So he'll try to find another installer. So they're really redoing the way they're doing things. And he also shared with me, honestly, that this is not the only location they've had problems at. And the installer in this location is not the only installer that they've had problems with. So they're basically cutting loose all their prior installers and coming up with new certifications and new firms that they feel comfortable working with. And I guess that's, is the product viable? Maybe. Do they yet have a organization that can sell and deliver the product reliably? I don't believe so. I haven't seen any evidence of that. And in fact, I continue to get confirmation of not having that organization yet, because there have been, multiple, dead end conversations and commitments that, haven't been carried through with.
So why don't we take the slides down? Thank you. And we will post all of this. I think everyone has the memo, but what I thought would be good, the memo talks about several potential options, and I want to make sure everyone asks questions, whether we have other options we could consider, because right now the memo lays out, go to all engineered wood fiber, go to a hybrid model, which would have PIP in it, which would require Concom saying yes to it. And those were kind of So, and those were both saying if we move off Corkine. So with that as the background, do we stay with Corkine or not, given what we've just heard? And I see Margaret's hand is up. And the what I don't know is when the decision has to be made in terms of procuring whatever surface we want and installing it. So I see Margaret's hand. Angelica's okay. Call on Margaret first to see if I didn't lay it out, and then I'll just go to any hand that's not.
I just apologize. I had just got a call I need to step away for a few minutes, but I will be back. Okay.
Okay, fine. So everyone should put hands up with any and all questions, because I've already, like I saw some playgrounds in Switzerland and I have some questions on, do we have other choices? So Angelica.
Yeah, no, thank you, Robert, for this. I appreciate the memo. I think that, you have, in my view, presented some very compelling red flags. I will say, though, that I am eager to discuss about the recommendations that you suggest. As a mother of children that will be attending the school, and also as somebody that is concerned about accessibility, I would like to have the following information. First, I'd like to have more information about the accessibility of an engineer wood fiber. I know that there is there's the option of the more stabilized one, because I had raised previously concerns about the accessibility of having a playground that is wood fiber for students with mobility vehicles. I know that also the poor in the PIP had raises concerns for in various ways. I know we've raised before the concerns about the toxicity, but I want to once again raise the concerns about related to accessibility. So on the one hand, the PIP is more accessible for mobility vehicles, but on the other hand, and as of this morning, I heard from a special education teacher again about the heat issues. So any of us that have been to Groff Park know that it's incredibly hot. It gets incredibly hot, and the good thing about Groff is it's got a splash pad. So children take off their shoes and they run right to the splash pad to cool off, because you cannot walk on it. Now, many students will have, of course, their shoes on, but a lot of students with sensory concerns will take off their shoes. And many students ambulate in various ways. They use not only mobility vehicles, but also will take off their shoes or will use their hands to get to the playground. And so all of this races. So I'd like to have more information about the temperature of pour in place. And I know before one of our discussions had been about if the color and choosing a different color can mitigate temperature. I'd like to have exact data about, if as best we have, about the mitigation of temperature concerns that we have poured in place. So if we can have a memo that buffers up the part with the recommendations. I'm glad we're not taking a vote, because at this point I don't feel like I have enough data and enough information to take a vote on it, but I appreciate the concerns raised. So thanks.
Allison.
Thank you, Bob. I really appreciate the information. In the report, it's mentioned that EWF, sand, and pea gravel were options. And I just want to humbly say that I do not believe that those are options. Because the idea of a stabilized EWF, I'd like more information on that, but we have wood chips now and it is not accessible. Sand is not accessible. Gravel would not be accessible. We have a handful of children who use wheelchairs. This is not an abstract idea. We really need to make sure we prioritize their ability to access the playground, because at this time they are not able to access our playgrounds. And then also I keep hearing about how Europe is doing things, and I'm not familiar enough with the weather extremes, because when I look at a map, I know Germany is similar in latitude, but I hear about how much more mild the weather is there or something like that. But Canada, same, if maybe Canada is using this product, or what are they doing that would give evidence to some of the concerns regarding accessibility and heat. And so I just would like us to because that one recommendation in the report, I do not feel are options. And so I just would like to make sure we have as much information as possible. And Canada might be a better comparative resource, since we don't have a whole lot of options in New England that are using things that we are finding usable. Thank you.
Deb?
Hi, thank you for this. It's, nobody wants to put in a playground that nobody can use, but we also don't want to put it in a playground that some students can use and others can't. My issues, I mean, it seems like the memo identifies two basic issues. One is whether or not Corkine would work for us based on the fact that it didn't work for Easton. And respectfully, I would need more information about other installations. In particular, Bob, you mentioned that there were other difficulties installing Corkine in the US. So I would want to know what those were and have access to some of that information. I know, Kathy, we don't have an infinite amount of time, but I also feel like it's really important for the community to have the opportunity, well, for us to study it properly, for the information to get out to the community about what we're basing our decisions on, because you don't want to be in a bait and switch position where people go away at the end of the school year and say, hey, and then come back and say, hey, what happened to our playground while we weren't looking over the summer? So those are my concerns, is that we really just do a thorough job in zooming out and thinking about what our needs are. So one is whether or not Corkine is going to work for us, even though it didn't work for Easton, or is not currently working for Easton. And the other is that the product itself is not commonly used in the United States, and therefore installation, access, all of those things have been problematic, and that's certainly a concern. If overall the product is beneficial and we can afford it, then it's worthwhile, in my opinion, pushing past those difficulties in getting through to getting a product that will work best for the environment and for our students, all of our students, and for those little bodies that will be absorbing whatever whatever outgassing these products do. And I recognize that all of them, any composite material, is going to have some sort of binding. So I did go back to this playground surfacing from Lowell Center for Sustainable Production to remind myself of what the different binding concerns were. So those are my thoughts. We really need some time to process this. We really need to get community input. We really need some more information. And is engineered wood fiber wood chips? Because I couldn't quite understand it. Because it seemed like in Bob, your memo, you said it was marginally accessible, but if that is engineered wood fiber wood chips, I can't see how it is even marginally accessible. That's it.
So, Bob, I think that's a question of what exactly is engineered wood fiber, and the is it anything we see in town, and in terms of wheelchairs and protecting people against falls? So I think the question, it's loose, right? So it's loose. It's not a uniform surface.
The lay person would look at it and call it wood chips. It's a more carefully produced wood chip product with, more carefully controlled gradation and material sizes and things like that. It is sold openly as being accessible. And it might be the day it's installed, but it very quickly loses its accessible function because of how the material moves and shifts and settles and things like that. So that was the reason I chose the word marginally. Is yes, on day one it might meet AAB requirements, but on day two probably not.
Bruce.
Bob, I thank you for your report and you and Margaret's energy in this. I'm not so inclined to be wanting to have more information. I do want to have more information on some things, but it seems evident to me that you've done a fairly thorough job. And it's kind of distressing, the result, because I too have read, and I reread this morning, the Turi report from Laurel that I think is probably the basis for the Concom's finding that this poured-in-place rubber is unacceptable because of the contaminant outwash. Although I think I'd like to be sure of that, so I would probably want us at some point to, depending on, I guess, on the outcome, but it would seem that we want to be know a little bit more now about how resolute the finding of the Concom was in regard to the alternatives, particularly the poured-in-place rubber. Because this product seemed as though it provided all that we wanted. It was a light-colored surface. It seemed to more likely not get so hot. It was resilient, and its fall protection seemed to be in order. It provided the level of accessibility. It seemed like the world had come up with an improvement. But now, from what you're saying, Bob, I can understand from my 50 years as an architect and half of it as a principal, and one who was in a practice that was often pioneering certain practices. And so we were always looking at new products and trying to decide whether or not we should recommend them to our clients and so forth. So I was mindful when a year or more ago that DANISCO decided not to make such a recommendation, and I know DANISCO not to be, I think by now, frivolous in those kind of determinations. So there was a concern there a bit, but it seemed as though this product was something that we could depend on. But now it seems that you found that the product is suspect both from an installation procedural point all the way up to the robustness of the company, and as to whether the company will survive sufficiently to be able to provide reliable warranty commitments. So it seems that this product, whereas it might be suitable for a deep-pocketed client, we often worked for rather wealthy institutions that could afford the risk of having to redo this or to fight the battle with a manufacturer. But for a town, and for a town such as us and so forth, it seems that this product and this manufacturer is not ready for a place like us to commit. It would seem what Bob has found that we're not in a position to conscionably commit to this product and this company and this place at this time. Your data about the temperature range for installation seems to be exactly what you might expect from a product that's doing well in Norway, where you could probably get a lot of hours of the year through the summer when you could install the product within that temperature range. But you're right, it's a narrow window in this climate. So that's a concern. I know from, as I said, from my time in the game, that companies that are successful on one continent don't automatically quickly establish themselves reliably on another. That's true of fiber cement products that were in Australia decades before they were successfully established here. So it just seems that a small town with a very large commitment to a project is not a good candidate to take on the risk associated with this kind of product, this kind of company, this kind of innovation, and so forth. So I would be persuaded that we should look for an alternative, sadly. So I guess I would be asking our design team whether they could recommend not just an alternative product, but probably also maybe an alternative approach, because maybe it's possible to sufficiently diminish the adverse environmental consequences by doing some kind of hybrid combination. I don't know, but I would like to know whether our design team at this point would have thoughts that could help us through this, because it's clearly a dilemma, and it's clearly one that has to be resolved fairly quickly, because we're in construction, and we may have had we have much more time to deliberate during design, but once you get into construction and you're well into construction, this is not a time when we can sit back and ask for lots of reports and more information. I think we have involved someone who understands that right now you have to get the information, you have to get it quickly, you have to be thorough, and you have to be exhaustive. So my guess is that there's not a lot more out there to discover about this product and this company. You could tell me whether you think I'm wrong, Bob, whether there's more you can discover, but my sense is that we have to be a little more engaged. We have to be a little more aggressive and move towards looking for a viable alternative. And sadly, that doesn't seem to be a very big window. So my question would be, Kathy, Madam Chair, to our design team, whether such recommendations could be given to us at the next meeting.
Okay, I'm going to take a moment as chair just to provide some information that I think Deb asked about, because she wasn't here for the first, I don't think she was here for the first round of it. We called around when Corkine came up as a product, Deb, Margaret, but we also looked to see where else had been installed. And the issue is whether there was any installer that did anything in the Northeast. So Easton was the place we found. Because of that, there is no other choice, and they're switching installers. The place we knew about in Philadelphia turned out it wasn't all Corkine. Underneath it was PIP. So it had not been fully described well. There's some Texas, but there wasn't anything else in the kind of climate we have, and there's a little bit in California. So there was an effort to find out where in the United States there was, and so some of this is the company and also the installer. So what you heard from Bob is trying to find out anything about an installer, and what we're hearing is installers have not been well trained. If they're not well trained, Easton's replacing basically all of it, and they had to threaten to withhold the money. This wasn't oh, I'm so sorry, it's falling apart. So the warranty is a big issue. So I'm taking a series of notes, but I did want to give Tim a chance, just so everyone knows. He did a sketch of what a hybrid might look like, whatever else the issues of PIP are. So I want to make sure we have time for that. But I'll call on you, Deb. I just wanted to give you that background. There was a lot we called all around, and Margaret did a lot of work with the conclusion that it's likely viable, and we have one place that's installing it, but we didn't have any more information. And that's when Danisco decided, and with actually Rupert from the school system said, there's no way we should be the first. Let's see what happens in the other, because the installation is the big issue. It's complicated to install it. So I think at least today, it's sounding like Corkine in the summer of 2025, as far as we know, is not viable for the spring of 2026, from what we know right now. That's about where we are with Bob's memo. We don't know for sure there's an installer that knows how to do it. We don't know whether there's a company that will back it up. So the question is what else we have on the table. So I'll turn it over to you, but I just wanted also to alert people that there is a drawing of what it might look like if the objection was the entire surface. Go on, Deb.
Yeah, I just wanted to caution about generalizing from a data set of one, which is what scientists sometimes do. What I'm hearing is there are no other successful installations at all in the Northeast.
Correct.
And
This was, we searched for that initially and we found Easton was the one that was about to do it. And then we knew about one in Philadelphia. There were at the time we were looking at this, there were several going in Texas, and it looked like there were some in California. Margaret, who went off the call, but she had a list because she was calling to see whether, and then she did find this branch that was saying, yes, we're able to do it in the Northeast, and here's Easton. And this alert, by the way, came to us because the team that's doing our playground equipment was visiting Easton. And they said, you should go see it. It's being torn up. It's failing. There's a problem with the product. So we got an alert because of the Danisco team's sub person on playground equipment. So I just wanted to make sure people had that information. So we're not likely, we do not have to make a vote today. We meet again in a month. So I'm making a list of everybody's questions that we want to have the design team get back to us on, so we can make a decision a month from now. And what we can also do is gather, Concom had information beyond just the Tory piece on PIP. We can make sure that that gets into a packet as well, on that. So the issue is a unitary surface that covers up the base that allows, as you said, wheelchair. It also, Allison, I remember you saying, I don't want any more broken bones. That the issue is, that it doesn't pack down so much that when someone falls on it, they break something, that, that we want it to be, that have that resilience to it, not just on day one, but a month later, or 6 months later. So those were the concerns that got us originally to a choice of PIP or Corkine, because we didn't have any other uniform binder kinds of things that anyone told us about anyway. That's just the background on how we got to Corkine. Yeah.
so follow up then.
Yeah.
Just in my very preliminary Googling, of the unitary options, eliminating artificial grass, and eliminating Corkine, that leaves rubber PIP and perforated rubber mats. Are either of those, I mean, I know when we talked about turf, there were turf options that didn't have certain PFAS elements. Is there PIP that's not made with recycled rubber tire? It's all recycled rubber tire.
Yeah, and turf to play on doesn't have the resilience to fall
No, I
on.
know. I know.
So yeah, I'll let Bob, but I think, I'm doing questions. So the question is there other options? I saw connected large, thick rubber mats in a European playground, but they put them just under the play equipment that you could fall off of, and surrounding it was in a grassy area of a playground, but they were put under the swings, under any climbing equipment, under the seesaws, and under seesaws, swings, and climbing equipment. And they were, when I say, like this thick, with a connector with some space between them, so they wouldn't get wet, they wouldn't have puddles on them. So Bob, and then we've got Tim to ask, what are our other choices? And I think we're asking a month from now, can we have some choices before us? And Margaret, I was speaking for you on the background research you did on Corkine, on where else it's being installed. Do we just give up on it because right now we don't have a reliable parent company or installer that we know for sure? So I'll let you come back to that, but Bob's hand is up. So I'm saying that we don't have to decide anything today. We just have to get every question on the table so that we can make a decision a month from now. Bob.
Just a very quick comment on PFAS. My understanding is that whether we're talking about artificial turf or crumb rubber or other types of things, the PFAS doesn't originate within the product itself. It originates in the machining and the manufacturing process. And so rubber doesn't have PFAS in it. It's the process of manufacturing the rubber, and possibly, and I'm clearly no expert in manufacturing rubber tiles or other types of surfacing, may also, unknown to me, but may also have contaminants that are introduced as part of the manufacturing process.
So I'm not seeing any hands up. Tim, maybe just show quickly that one slide you showed this week when I asked what would a hybrid look like. And I'm not saying I think PIP is viable, but just what it might look like and whether Concom would care that we've taken some of it out. If that's okay with everyone. And then I do have a great
It will take me 1 second to pull it up, but I will.
And what I'll do is I'll type up, because I have messy handwriting right now, but I'll type up the list of questions and share it with everyone to see whether I missed anything on information that we would like to have by the next meeting, unless I hear any other bright ideas right now. And Margaret, the question that was asked, Deb asked, of should we explore more on Cork Keen? Is it working well in other places? Do we have another history? And I know you went deeply into Philadelphia to find out it wasn't all Cork Keen on what was underneath it, and then where else it was around the country. I mean, we did a fair amount of work on Cork Keen to come up with Easton, Deb, as a place. So Margaret, I don't know. I mean, that was a year.
I mean, I will just add, I think what I found in my research is that they've done, this is very extensively used in Texas, but it's a whole different climate zone. And the issue with Cork Keen is that it has proved to be, it gets much more brittle in cold weather. So it's hard to see that situation as applicable to this one. There was an installation in Philadelphia, which I felt at the time that I was sold. I was sold a bum steer because it was initially presented to me by one of the many Cork Keen reps who has disappeared over the course of this conversation as being a perfect example, only to discover that they ran into the same issue in Philadelphia. They had specified all of the playground equipment, which had fall heights that were based on the assumption that we use the rubberized surfacing. So when they decided to switch to Cork Keen, the already procured equipment, playground equipment didn't work. So the solution that the installer came up with was to put the rubber down and then put a little bit of Cork Keen on top of it. So it looks, when you go online, it's like, oh, wow, look at this fabulous installation. But in fact, I would say they cheated, and I would say they set themselves up for failure because they are likely to get delamination because they're putting two products on top of each other. Were never designed to be done that. These products were never designed to be used that way. So that was, to me, that was kind of the end of, talking to the Cork Keen reps, because I think that they really just, as Bob has experienced, it's a revolving door with these folks. They haven't got their act together. And I have not learned since of any other installations. People are watching and they're interested. I give the folks in Easton, the design team, a lot of credit because they were willing to go out on a limb about this. And I respect Danisco for putting, and the landscape architect on our team for putting their foot down and saying, we aren't willing to absorb liability for this. So that's all I have to add.
And this is the rough sketch that I mentioned that Tim came up with when he saw Bob's memo had the word hybrid in it. So Tim, you can explain what brown is and what blue is.
So blue is the board in place rubber, brown is the wood chips, wood fiber, depending on the product that is selected. And this is certainly a viable approach. You'll find if you survey schools in Massachusetts, this is actually used not infrequently. Usually it's used as a cost control measure, wood chips being much less expensive than the board in place. And this is a way to get the accessibility to the play equipment and all of that without covering the whole surface. You know, the question remains if the concern with board in place rubber is the leaching of any off-gassing or contaminants, if using 50% of it less addresses those concerns, and that's not for us to make, but all of the approaches that involve engineered wood fiber and board in place rubber, be it all wood fiber, a hybrid system, or all board in place, are certainly viable, and it's just a matter of weighing the pros and cons and the committee making a decision what they want to do.
Thank you. Thank you, Tim. And this will also go in the packet, just so people can remember the visual. So taking that down, as chair, I said potential vote. We're not taking any vote today. I think people should be prepared to make a decision a month from now. And so I will get my notes. Angelica laid out a series of questions, as did Allison. We're also asking, do we have any other options on the accessibility side? You know, think broadly. And Deb then questioned whether we're rejecting Corkine outright as not viable. So that's still on the table, Deb, on that question as well. So I'm not ruling it. I don't think we should rule anything out, but it's a short list of questions, and I guess it's some combination of Bob, Danisco, Margaret getting back to us with a follow-up, what else? We know, and just in terms of public input, there was quite a bit of public input, which had us move away from PIP. You know, this is not the community itself, unless we know someone who has installed another substance in a playground and had it work for accessibility. We're faced with, I think, a difficult choice, because if we move away from one that we've seen in other places in town works for falls, for all of those concerns, but does have the heat thing. So your question, Angelica, is do we know it doesn't get as hot if the color is right? Do we know that about PIP? And I think that's a great question. So I think we may be faced with options we don't like, but we still have to make a decision. So that's a month from now. Bruce, Angelica, and Deb all had their hands up. So that's where that's my conclusion so far. Bruce.
I'd like to ask Bob and Margaret whether we as a committee can expect any additional information about Corkine between now and the next meeting, or, as I suspect, has that research been fully executed and reported upon?
I'm going to defer to Bob because Bob
Sure.
is really leading the process at this point.
I know that one question that was asked, I don't expect we will have any additional information on, which is information regarding the other failed locations. What I shared was what I was told by the sales manager for Ameren on Monday, which was telling a gentleman who used to work in the PIP business that now works in the cork business to acknowledge this isn't the only problem they have as a manufacturer supplier. I don't think they're going to give us a list of their bad projects, but I think it was telling that they were willing to, in a informal conversation, honest conversation, you know, let me know that this gentleman's name, Chris Hansen, you know, that they're dealing with this elsewhere. So I'd love to be able to answer that question, but I suspect I will not be able to answer it. In terms of temperatures, yeah, could somebody get a temperature gun and run around to some sites that are in direct sunlight and measure temperatures? That you know, that's doable. That's an exercise. I don't necessarily know what we compare that to, because, you know, short of driving back to Easton again to put a temperature gun on their facility and saying, okay, this is how this compares. So I'll say, we can try to collect additional information, but I'm not certain we'll be able to answer all the questions. Just like I don't think a perfect solution or a solution that everybody's going to like. I think there's a lot of information would love to have, but we won't ultimately have.
I'm only asking because it seems to me that that it's a pretty clear decision about Corteen, that it's not something that this town can commit to. And I really was asking whether there's any likelihood that we would get information that would cause us to make a different decision by next month. I'm not really advocating that we make the decision now, but I am observing that we probably could, if we wanted to, and make as good a decision today as we would make a month from today.
Okay, so that's the question on Corteen is, will we have anything? And I pose this as a question, so we don't have to. Will we have anything more? So we have what we have on Corteen right now. Angelica, Deb, and Allison.
Thanks, Kathy. I just wanted to make very clear the accessibility issue because I don't think it's fully getting through. And I appreciate, Kathy, what you've said about what a challenging decision. It is a challenging decision in terms of accessibility. On the one hand, the pour in place makes it accessible. On the other hand, what I have experienced, and I am also hearing from special education teachers, it also raises accessibility issues at the same time. So it's not just an issue of the toxicity, it's the issue of the heat being a concern for students with disability who have sensory concerns. So just to clarify, students with wheelchairs may be able to get through, but students who have sensory concerns and may be taking off their shoes or walking with their hands on the surface will encounter a super hot surface. I myself have taken my children and I find that it gets super, super hot. So again, to contextualize my question, it was, can we find that there are any design options that mitigate so that we can take an informed decision to solve this problem? And just to recall, in the past, we had also discussed about umbrellas or some kind of shade from above. I don't know if that's still part of the design, but something from above that can cover that surface, even if while the surface remains pit because we want it accessible, if there's something to mitigate how hot it gets, whether it's the color or some kind of shade umbrella or something. So I would love to see that in the design considered, the various things, not just, I love information, but also what design solutions we have to increase the accessibility of the playground.
Okay, so just in response, I'll make sure for next time people can see the amount of umbrellas we already have, and that question then could be added to could more. And a question, we don't even know if hybrid is viable in terms of we can get through Concom. So Deb and then Allison, and we don't know what, we don't right now know what the full range of choices are. Deb.
So I have 3 requests. One is that we have a public meeting before the vote where the public has an opportunity to weigh in on whatever information we have. The second is for closure on Corteen. I understand there's not much expectation to get a list of either successful and or failed projects from the parent company, but I think being able to say that in public is worthwhile. So I respect the fact, Bob, that you don't think they're going to get back to you in either way, but perhaps reaching out to the parent company in Europe and getting a list of installations in the US would allow us to have some answer to that question. And then the last is, I think you need to get on the Conservation Committee docket, because it does not look like we have anything except potentially poured in place rubber. And that doesn't sound like that's gonna fly from either an accessibility point of view or from a environmental point of view. Thank you.
Allison.
I just want to go back to Tim's design, and I've been trying to imagine what does that look like, because I keep wanting to see my children who have accessibility needs being able to play tag, being able to be fully in the game. And the design that Tim brought up, which I think he's trying to create a nice compromise there. I think it just makes it so that there's still a limit to how much somebody can be involved. Remember, nothing can help a child who can't go upstairs, right? So like, and I guess we can talk about the types of structures we have that can incorporate ramps as much as possible so that we can have as much accessibility to structures as possible. Maybe there are, as I remember us talking about coverings and how expensive they are. I'm curious about the types of structures that might integrate coverings with them. Maybe not separate, but they're part of the play structure. I'm not feeling great about the compromise, even though I really appreciate him taking the time to do that. So thank you, Tim. But we just have an opportunity to create a space where I think kids can be fully involved. And if we're going to put if you're asking me in that final vote, if I have to choose between children being able to play fully together versus the environment, I'm just going to say I'm really wanting children to be able to play fully with each other, because that's what I really want them to be able to experience for the first time. So I'd like us not to forget that that's really important. And if somebody has to sit out and be all by themselves in order for the environment to be protected, I just want us to, it feels awful to me because we have that now. And I just think we can do better. And we struggle with maintaining wood chips. I just want to be clear. Wood chips takes a lot of maintenance. And I just want, like, we're just putting more on our staff to try to maintain something that, as Bob said, if it's done like the very first day, it has a higher accessibility rating, but it's not going to, we put more pressure on our maintenance staff if we have to keep adding and grooming to try to maintain accessibility. So thank you.
So what I'm hoping that we'll do next time, Allison, is both come back, Tim, just resurrect our old pictures to also show the other play spaces we have, because we have some cement areas which aren't the fall one on what we have. And I would like everyone to know, on terms of public input, there was no public input at Concom except against PIP. No one was speaking out on these other issues, on children and playing and falls, that it was not presented. It came out of the blue, and that wasn't well represented in another meeting too. So this concern about the children was not presented, and then we came up with Corkine as something that seemed to be the win-win. So for the next meeting, I can post it as definitely a 2-hour meeting, so that we can revisit the playground and how it's organized, and decide to what extent we have a choice we can live with, and so that the design team has a way of moving forward. I mean, we have some time. Bob said, procurement-wise, except for Corkine, these are all on the procurement list. So once we can procure it. Installment-wise, Tim, the surface has to be installed by when?
The construction schedule has the playground and surface installed in April of 26.
April. So April is this is when it would happen in 2026. So it's not like we can ruminate on this and hope we lived in a different world, or we lived 10 years from now where new options have been developed for us to choose from. And just so, when Bruce said about deep pockets, we've picked two, whether it's Corkine or PIP, both of those are the most expensive of the options. If there's something else that's protective, it's going to be less, partial, it'll be less expensive. So budget-wise, but we won't have a school project to replace it if it fails. We won't have that money again. So we need to at least get something in my mind that, like the school, we want a school that's going to last for a really long time. We would like this to last. So that's for the next meeting. So I think we have a great list and good issues. And so the 15th, I will post. I think I've I've been posting them for longer than we've been going, but they've been half-hour meetings because we've had not much to discuss. So Ksenia, Is that satisfactory? I'm not trying to cut it off, but I don't think we can go much further now without additional information. So no vote today. Revisit this next week, and next month, and we'll probably make this first with construction update. So is everyone comfortable with that? I'm seeing nodded heads. So in which case we're turning to invoices, and then we do have public comment, and we have at least 3 people in the public. So I want to make sure we allow the up to 3 minutes for that comment. So invoices, Connor.
Yep. So hopefully you can see the invoice package presentation, starting with the executive summary. Hopefully you can hear me okay. Can I just get confirmation that you can see my screen? You can hear me okay?
In here.
Perfect. Great. All right, starting off with the executive summary. Top left, as always, we have our roadmap ahead. We have invoice previously in green, current invoice package in black, our unbilled portion of contracts in yellow, and our white brick road here, which is our currently uncommitted portion of the budget. Down here, invoice previously 24 million, current invoice package $4,904,594, and we'll get to the current invoice package in a minute. Percent invoiced overall, the project budget is 30%, 70% remaining. And our total project budget is here. Scrolling down to our cash flow. Once again, this yellow line here shows us the month we're currently in. And this green bar is our current invoice package. It's the biggest so far. And that's because we have a lot more trades involved now. As always, green is the actual monthly invoice package amounts. Our blue is our projection, our roadmap ahead. And again, this big blue line at the end here just holds our contingency. So if I keep on going, down to the invoice package summary. I'll zoom in a little bit. Go. We have 6 invoices this month, 1 from Answer Accenture, 2 from Danisco, 1 from CTA, and 2 from Allied Testing, third-party testing agency. So the first one from Answer is for $49,682.50. It's 2% of our contract overall, bringing us up to 46% complete with 54% remaining. For Danisco, we have 2 invoices. The first is at $65,000 that we see every month for construction contract administration services. And the second one is a sub-consultant invoice for geothermal consulting for $24,640. It's 1% of their contract overall, bringing them up to 78%. I know 76 plus 1, 78. There's a little rounding going on there, but it is 78% complete. 22% remaining. CTA Construction, 1 invoice for $4,757,860.19. 6% of their contract overall, bring them up to 27% complete, and 73% remaining of their contract. Allied Testing, 2 invoices this month, 1 for $3,490.78, and 1 for $3,921. 2% of their contract overall, 19% complete, 81% remaining. So unless there's any questions on the summary, we'll start going to the invoices.
Connor, I have a question. If you could scroll back up to the first diagram, basically the overview. I'm looking at the contingency bar, which has always been very high, and because it contains that 8 million or so that was we gained because of the bid process and so forth, it's not easy for me to see whether that's been drawn down at all. And given that we're now almost 30% into the contract, it might be appropriate to ask, have we had any change orders, and how much of the contingency has been committed at this stage of the contract? Are we how well set are we apropos of the way in which it was originally said. Is this project moving well from that point of view, or have we got a large number of change orders that we can't actually see because the initial height of that damn thing is so high that we wouldn't necessarily notice contingency expenses?
I'm happy to. So firstly, there have been, yes, there are some change orders. We've presented on a few to date. We could speak to one or two more today. Having said that, there's been two significant things, and everything else has been, one of them was the schedule matter that we all addressed and spoke deeply about as a result of a bid protest in the fall, right? Setting up allowances for winter conditions, which is a complete done deal at this point, and setting up an allowance for acceleration for overtime work, which is maybe a quarter or a third in to that allowance. So those matters were significant, upfront, and stable. There's one change that's recent around the water line above. We'll speak to in a minute. Thank Bob. For everything else, there has been remarkably little, which speaks very highly to the quality of the design.
And Bruce, I think when Connor gets to that page, we saw those two big change orders, the overtime and the winter condition one.
Yeah.
And when we went into the contract, we knew that would be there. So I think we can get, add those up to the other pieces. So Bob, do you want to speak to the
Yes.
water line?
I'm not surprised by the answer, but I wanted to know where we were.
Certainly, if you'd like, I can reinforce what Ksenia has said, is that other than these two items, that the quantity and the magnitude of the small number of change orders have been remarkably small today. Job's not done yet, so I'm not going to put that money in the bank yet, but there have been no significant change order issues that have come up. The waterline issue, I'll be honest, it's an item that I flagged when I got involved in the project. One of the many hats I've worn over the years, in addition to designing many miles of water main, and also as a water superintendent in East Longmeadow. I flagged that we were retaining the existing asbestos cement or transite pipe water main that comes into the project site, that loops through the project site. Transite material was used for 20 or 30 years in the water industry, and then it went away because it wasn't a very good product. It had lots of issues related, particularly at a location like this, where you have high groundwater and poor soils. It over time will get soft and punky, and can at the same time, the exterior gets soft and punky, but the inside gets very brittle. And it is very easy to have it blow up catastrophically. Vibrations near it, working over the top of it, etc. So I quite honestly was concerned that we're going to retain that water main, and maybe it made its way through construction, but a year or two later, it might fail. It's almost 70 years old now. It's already past the end of its useful life. So, we discussed it with the design team. I discussed it with the town manager, discussed it with DPW, and we all agreed that it was the right thing to do, was to replace it as part of this project. And I don't remember the exact number, Ksenia. It's 200,000 and change, I believe. But it's that, and the initial change are the two big ones in this job today. But I was the guy that brought it up, and I'm certainly willing to explain and defend that recommendation that I made to the town manager.
Hey, Connor, I think you could go on and go through as quickly as possible, because we're holding people on. That'd be great.
Yeah, no problem. I will do quickly. And as to Bruce's comment about noticing the contingency, we do have the original cash flow projection here, which goes a little higher than the current bar, and that is in part due to the change orders we already executed, also a placeholder forecast for, the playground surfacing, and also we distribute a little bit of the contingency throughout the project as to facilitate our cash flow projections. But so we do have a little bit of a visual of that. So scrolling through the invoices, first up, the answer invoice for $49,682.50. And scrolling through the backup, we do not have any sub-consultant invoices this month for answer. Moving down to Danisco's invoice for July services, construction contract administration services, $65,000. And their sub-consultant invoice for geothermal consulting services, $24,640. And their sub-consultant GZA's backup. I thought I might have heard a voice chime in, so if there was a question, if you could just please repeat that. I didn't quite catch it. Maybe not. So down to CTA's requisition, certified for the amount of $4,757,860.19. Moving down to the summary, column E is our this period work in place, work completed, and column F, stored materials, and then our total for each line being billed this month is in column G, completed and stored to date. So this month they are billing for a few change orders, a couple to change order 2, which is the acceleration in winter conditions. At this point, it's just acceleration being billed. A change order 3, which was for the partial overrun of the winter conditions allowance of change order 2. That's not what's being billed here. The second part of that we presented on that was the brick type quantity change. And so they're billing for a portion of that here. And then change order 4, which they're billing for a portion of that water line work that has begun and that Bob was just talking about. So that's change orders. Are there any questions on the rec that are CTA's requisition? I can keep going. Okay. Moving down to Allied's first invoice for $3,490.78. Got some reinforcing steel inspections, concrete field tests, and structural steel inspections, and then a surface flatness testing of the slabs, or a slab. And then the second Allied invoice for $3,921, and some more concrete tests, structural steel inspections, some field density tests, compaction tests, and masonry inspections. Unless there's any questions on those, that concludes our invoice presentation. As always, we have pre-reviewed these invoices and recommend them for your approval.
I make a motion that we approve the invoices as presented. Is there a second?
Second, Deb.
And is there any discussion? Once again, I want to thank you all for this type of presentation. I find it very useful. And to the extent the committee would find it useful, I will get this put into the packet so you can look at it after the fact. And Bruce, if you looked at that contingency table that we went through quickly, I think it answers your question. You can total them up, earlier ones and current ones, so we can see it. So I am putting this to a vote. Again, just going across my screen as I see people. Kathy is a yes. Mike Gallo,
Yes.
Bruce,
Yes.
Simone,
Yes.
Jennifer. Jennifer, you have to speak up so we can hear you.
Yes, sorry.
That's okay. Tammy,
Yes.
Deb,
Yes.
Allison,
Yes.
Alicia,
Yes.
and Angelica.
Yes.
It's unanimous with 3 absent. So is there any other comments or suggestions? And Deb, I did see that you just sent me an email. I mean, if anyone wants to send me any emails on, follow up so I can put it into this memo. So I see your hand is up. The next step is it will be public comments. So I encourage you to send me emails about any questions, concerns, and for the agenda, especially for the next meeting. I'm not seeing any hands up. So we are now, yes,
Sorry.
Deb.
Yeah,
There
I
we
just
go.
had a quick question. A member of the public asked me, and I thought I'd ask this group. Has any of the elementary school building project funds been involved with the traffic studies or any of the reconfiguration of the roads around the schools?
No, I can answer that. No, so there was a traffic consultant, and the school money so far has all been internal. So how is the flow of the buses and the cars going? And then the school money put that temporary blinking light out there when as construction started, but the outside the area of the school the town said the town wanted to deal with that, and you've seen what we've done so far, which is not get very far. Rupert did participate in a couple meetings, and he and I put a memo in on some thoughts on it. And the original consultant to Danesco provided some thoughts on external, but not very much. They weren't asked to do a survey. So that was all part of the very initial discussion when we were looking at Wildwood versus Fort River. So the rest, there's not been a lot of DPW used internal money for that, the 3 traffic circle design, but that wasn't, that didn't come out of the school budget.
Thank you.
So answer it. So I am not seeing any other hands up. We're open for public comments, and we have 3 members of the public, and I will allow to talk. Maria, I think I have allowed you to talk.
I hope so. Can you hear me?
Yes, you're here.
Okay. Maria Kapicki, South Amherst. So a number of things about the playground surface. Number one, let's just make sure that we're talking on the same page. Engineered wood fiber is not wood chips. They are 2 different surfaces that behave differently. Number 2, PIP just is poured in place. It could be rubber poured in place. It could be cork poured in place. And there is actually a bonded engineered wood fiber that is a unitary surface. So PIP talks about it being a unitary surface that is bonded by something, usually a urethane. But engineered wood fiber can be either loose fill or bonded. So that is another option that you need to look at. I think that what has been established, what Bob has established, is that Easton has had a pretty rough road of it from an installation point of view. It does not mean that this product itself is not good. It means that there have been issues with installation and with communication. And I agree with Deb that what you need to do is to express to the parent company in Europe that we want to use your product, but we're hearing these experiences, and we want you to guarantee this is something that you can work on. There are successful installations in the US, throughout the US, and if they can install successfully Corkine in Texas, I think with their heat, I think we can install it here. I'm sure that there are restrictions on any installation, including rubber tip. So, I'm not persuaded there. And, you simply don't hear about the projects that go off without a hitch. So I think you need to do more studying and keep an open mind about Corkine. But I also want to talk about the fact that it was not just me, it was not just other members of the public that had concerns about crumb rubber PIP. It was also the Board of Health who advised not to use it. They met, they did their own research, they came to their conclusion, it was unanimous. The Conservation Commission, likewise, did their own research, and their concern, in case you have forgotten, this property is bordered by the Fort River and by a stream on the east and south borders. And the problem is the crumb rubber. That stuff, once that is somewhere, it is going to be sending things out into the environment and to the users. And that includes volatile organic carbons, it includes carcinogens, it includes heavy metals. So it's not a matter of, is this a problematic thing? It's that it is, and it's going to affect the people and the animals that use it and the waterways that are right adjacent. And that's why the Concom had such a problem with this. And they, again, were unanimous.
Maria, you're over 3 minutes at this point, so please wrap up.
Okay. Yeah. All right. So you really should not use crumb rubber. If you're going to use something temporizing, then you should be using engineered wood fiber, bonded engineered wood fiber, something like that. But I really think that you should continue to pursue Corkine. But crumb rubber is the problem. And kids, that is going to break down, and kids are going to touch it, they're going to eat it. And you only have to look at the old track to see what that looks like when it breaks down, which it will. Every product has a lifetime. And this is not a product you want there. Once it's there forever.
Thank you,
the
Maria.
Chemicals.
So I'm seeing we're down to one other, and I don't see a hand up. I think everyone knows we also have an email from Maria, and as we did earlier on. So I want to thank everyone for what I thought was a very good discussion. I can, if people want, I can gather together the type of reports. I did see the reports that the Board of Health was looking at. I actually gathered all of them. So that's my used to be health policy person wanting to read really long reports. So they were interesting, is what I would say about them. So I think what we've said is the agenda for the next meeting, which we usually have just a simple agenda, will be largely devoted to this issue. So that will be the agenda for the next meeting, which everyone should have on their calendar. And please do send me if there's something that you leave this meeting and say, I wish I knew more of. So Bruce, in the report that he flagged, did talk about engineered work with some kind of bonded surface, but I don't know whether we know where that exists, but it would be useful to know where does it exist with a uniform. So we're looking for what choices do we have, so that we can give some instruction to what is actually at this point, it's the town purchasing this, not Dinesco. because we carved it out at the larger project. So is there anything further? And if you didn't go on the site visit last time, I mean, the next site visit I encourage you to do it. Tammy, who's back, can see the building probably outside her window as it starts to rise from the ground. It's extremely exciting. We have an amazing one. And I will repost, I still have them, but I will repost the pictures of all the outside play areas in terms of the cement areas that will have play surfaces on them in terms of ball play and the basketball courts. We have more than just grass on this site, and we have a lot of grass on this site. So thank you, everyone. And if there are no objections, I will, actually, we're supposed to do a motion to adjourn. So I'm making a motion to adjourn. If someone will second it, and I'll just do a quick vote around the thing. Is there a second of my motion?
Second, Deb.
Yeah, so I'm just taking a vote on the motion to adjourn, what she started to do on the council. So Kathy's a yes, Mike,
Yes.
Bruce,
Yep.
Simone,
Yes.
Tammy,
Yes.
Deb,
Yes.
Jennifer,
Yes.
Allison,
Yes.
Angelica,
Yes.
and Alicia.
Yes.
We are adjourned at 2:12, so we made it under 2 hours. Thank you all very much and enjoy the rest of your summer.